If I knew how to make this flash work, I would flash at you right now. So we're here today because we have investigative journalism to do. And I've brought my trusty Kodak Browning that I dug out of my grandparents' attic. and we're ready. The only thing I figured out how to do is how to make the bulb actually like pop out at my... No, now I can't even make it do that. Well, hey. Anyway, we're here because we haven't... That worked. We have investigative journalism to do with Jason Dearen, and we're going to be talking about Kill Shot. And I know I'm excited. I know Davey's excited. Davey?
I'm very excited. You know what? Excited? I told Jason I was thinking of different sketch ideas, but as this book got more and more deeper into it, like I kind of didn't want to make jokes anymore. The only thing I had an idea for an animated guy that I could talk to named Fun Gus, but that's about the best I could come up with.
Fun. I like Fun Gus. Fun Gus. I think I know him actually. So we've seen. There's a bunch of people in here, and I just want to put up a couple of things here that I saw earlier. First of all, Kathleen Richardson, she's like, everyone else really excited about the book is interesting and terrifying and maybe angry and everybody involved. And then Mike Breen was talking about
emotions for this book.
They are totally, and it's also fun at the same time. Mike says hello, and Mike Breen was saying, I have to find it. Oh, Anna Lopez Carr says a super thrilling read. Keza says she didn't get the book because she was having the evening off, was a surprise. So she's like hoping there's no spoilers.
Tori, you know what? There's spoilers, but it's real life. Like it's still going to be interesting.
That's true. It's totally going to be awesome. I also I lost the comment. There it is about the I agree, Mike. He says these are the highlights of my semi-months, fortnights, bi-weeks. And Lorelei Peterson agrees. This is true. I really think that you all giving me life over here. And Lexi says, bless her grandfather or grandma for upgrading her house with Wi-Fi and a smart TV. So woohoo, we're all good to go. I also just want to say Kathleen Richardson, who gives us 3, 2, 1 tentacles, is also the one who gave us this evening's drink, and I'm really excited about that. Mine, unfortunately, my ice cube melted too soon, so it's all changed color already. But it is a very cool drink because it's got all the little multicolored particulate in it. So it's very excited. Rebecca Gibson is here. She is one of our past authors, and she says today is her Friday and the highlight of her day. So without further ado, and with an explosion, I'd like to introduce Jason Dearen. And there he is. Hello, Jason. I know. I'm super excited.
Best introduction I've ever had. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. What are you drinking tonight? You said you did a slightly different take.
Yeah, I couldn't find apple sour, so I got apple jack. I'm in New York, so it's kind of like an apple liquor, and then I put ginger ale and lime. And
nice.
It's good. Really good.
Yes. Fantastic. And a little strong, you said.
It's pretty strong.
Well, I have to say, I couldn't find colored sugar, so I happen to have a little bit of sumac at my house. So I actually made a sumac sugar rim, which is a little puckery and kind of nice, maybe a little grittier than I was expecting.
Nice.
but it's good. Yes.
Hey, you're experimenting.
That's right. That's what we do here. And so Kat has taken over recently as our drink maven, as our cocktail maven. We do have a wonderful battery of sort of peculiar volunteers because there's a lot that goes into Peculiar Book, like a lot more than you might expect that goes into running the Peculiar Book Club. So in addition to Davey, we have people who have jumped in and helped out. And they just all recently, I believe, all of you got a notice from me saying, hey, if you've got more skills you want to throw our way, please do. So we're going to have some other people who are helping us doing things with the Instagram and other stuff. Poison sumac. No, it's not poison sumac, Sky. It's definitely not poisonous. This time,
I had this is not a poisonous sumac thought as well.
I do have poisonous things in my garden. I have quite a lot of hellebore out there and nightshade, but this is not one of those poisonous things. So anyway, we're here to talk about Kill Shot, and I have to say, as many of my peculiars know, I tend to listen to the books on tape while running on my treadmill in the basement. And I know things are going really well if I fall off the treadmill at some point in the book. And so this was definitely a fall off the treadmill. Like there's certain phrases I was not expecting to, like slime mold and brainstem was not one I was expecting would come up, so I definitely had a few moments there. It's okay though. It's a small. I can't fall very far, so it's all right. But oh my goodness, I'm gonna wait. They have to queue up questions. You guys go ahead and type your questions. It takes a few minutes to get to me, and we'll be hearing from the audience. But I have to ask, what's the origin story on this one for you? Like, how did you encounter this story in the first place?
Right. So, well, thank you very much for having me. This is such a cool honor. I love everything that you've built here with this book club, and it's really just fun and interesting. So thank you. So how it came to me was in 2016, the two pharmacists kind of at the center of the book who unleashed this fungus you were just referring to on the unknowing public were in federal court facing murder charges. And, as a journalist kind of looking for story ideas or whatever, I was talking to an editor and she pointed this kind of odd trial out to me. I was like, pharmacist, federal court, murder, Boston, what is this about? And she said, well, if you look back at, do some time, go read about what happened in 2012. There was this fungal meningitis outbreak. It was a really intense couple of months where people were dying. No one knew why. There was this big investigation. And then it kind of all just went away because it was 2012. It was a presidential election. This happened kind of in the fall, right before the election. Superstorm Sandy hit the East Coast. I think the Newtown shooting happened not far after that. So there was just all this like big news and this really interesting, peculiar, just strange event occurred. And so she got go read about it and see why these guys are in prison. So that's kind of how it started for me. It was a conversation with my editor and, kind of looking for something. And so I spent the next like 4 months just reading everything I could about this. And there was some really great journalism done when the fungal meningitis outbreak was happening in 2012. But there was just it was one of those things, when you're reading something and you have more questions, you're reading something and you have all these questions and you just want the answers. And that's when I know maybe there's a good story is if there's questions to answer, then I'm like, okay, I want to do that. I want to go answer those questions.
Yeah.
Maybe the answers are interesting enough to make a story.
Right. Well, what I thought was you're telling me that 2012 was a time where like a lot of bad things were happening. So many bad things that some of the bad things just, I don't know anything. It's not like we live in a time period like that now, right? I mean, it's not like.
Yeah, nobody knows anything about that.
Nobody knows anything about that. I don't remember hearing about this. And this is astonishing to me because I have been doing medical history and social justice, and I couldn't believe I hadn't heard about this. And by the way, who was it? I'm sorry, I've missed up here in the queue. Who was it said they hadn't had a chance to get the book yet? Keza. Even though we're talking about this, trust me, it's kind of okay. You would be shocked at how much you can know and not know, because the very first chapter kind of gives you the outline. And I was like, oh, so, all the mysteries are told here. No, it just goes deeper. So it's a really interesting book. I would say you wrote it really deductively rather than inductively. It's like, here's the thing. And then how did we get there? And it's sort of like the reverse Rubik's Cube. And I think that that's really interesting because I just was astonished at how many things had to go wrong for this to happen the way it did. And Kathleen Richardson, she's got a question here, or a comment question. She says, how can people be so money hungry that they don't care about people? Oh, wait, money. There were so many people involved. I cannot remember the last time a book made me so angry. And I think that that's a feeling that a lot of us probably had. I mean, how did you grapple with that?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I live as a writer, as opposed to somebody maybe who writes fiction or is just like a pure science writer. As an investigative reporter, kind of one of the things that gets me interested in a story is when there are major collapses or failures in systems or among people. So yes, there was at the heart of this are these pharmacists who were greedy and created these drug making facilities that were not sterile, and that's a terrible crime. But what allowed that to occur, the bigger systems that fostered that kind of corruption, not only in the, kind of FDA oversight kind of world, but also in the medical world. Once patients start coming forward, it exposed a lot of different cracks in the medical system and the reliance on these types of drugs. And then also in the criminal justice system and kind of how it dealt with this and the limits of that and what they can do. And so that's how I grapple with it, because I feel like by really throwing myself into this kind of these dark places, I learn things that I can then hopefully translate to people in a way that will get them angry and educate them on something that I think is important, and then, create more awareness. And that can help create change. More people are aware of a problem when laws come up or people start talking about it, or God forbid this happens again, which, we can talk about later, but has in smaller ways continued to happen. These, the awareness from a book like this will help hopefully create a bedrock for future change.
Well, that was the other thing too, is just discovering that, like, the checks and balances were not checks and balances. I was astonished. You had mentioned at one point, I'm not going to remember the exact quote, and I should have written this down, but your point was sort of that the hospitals on their side were just assuming somewhere someone was checking, and I'm assuming that when I'm buying something, I'm assuming someone is checking. Right. And then to discover that just no one is astonishing. Sky says that was going to be her question. How did you personally actually get to the point of finishing it without just breaking? Like, how do you not just, because this is really frustrating stuff. I'm about to write a book about trans lives and Nazis. So yeah, this is a good question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think you find in these types of stories, there are so many good things that also happen. And I think I spend a lot of time on the good things in my book too, meaning there are incredible epidemiologists and mycologists and doctors and the prosecutors themselves who threw themselves into a complicated case like this and really kind of try to do it. So there are people trying to do the right thing in the midst of a really broken system. And they're not deterred from doing that because they believe in science and they believe in the law. And so I think finding those stories within these bigger, darker stories is really important, because it's also like you throw a lot of bleak, as I have, at you in this book, but there is hope there. There are people who are out there who care and who are working hard, even in the face of all these obstacles that are put up to them from a broken oversight system.
Right.
Yeah, and it's another thing too, to realize that a lot of our industry in this country, and I've not even, this book is just one example of many of kind of a pattern of things I've seen over my career, which is the idea of regulatory capture in this country, meaning we have a lot of laws on the books that are supposed to protect you from pesticides in your food and all these types of things, but they don't enforce them. They don't. So they pass these laws, and then the agencies don't have people that are out there actually enforcing the laws to make sure, because the companies pretty much end up getting the power and just doing it themselves. And so and that's what we saw here, is that the government was kind of like, oh, we know that this should be safe, but we trust you guys to go ahead and just do it yourself. The industry knows better. And whenever you do that, you have these terrible public health catastrophes.
Yeah. And it takes a terrible one, because it wasn't like there weren't red flags. So that was the other thing that I thought was quite astonishing, is that red flags kept being like, hey, problem, hello, and it was like, well, not enough people died. I mean, it's starting to sound like gun violence or something. It makes you wonder, like, it takes something really, really terrible, and then we know it still happens, and that's one of the big feelings about it.
Yeah, imagine how frustrating it is. One of the characters in the book is a woman who saw this coming in the 1990s and was like hair on fire, going to Congress, testifying, trying to work with journalists to get it out there that this is going. These new facilities that are popping up because of this kind of innovation that's occurring they're operating in this gray area, and they're going to kill people.
Yeah.
And nobody listened to her. So imagine how she feels watching everything she predicted actually occurring.
Yeah, because it's not exactly insane. You don't get the Schadenfreude because you're like, because innocent people are being harmed at the
that's exactly
not
right.
fair. Sorry. First question. Leanne's question here. First question, she says, you've done tons of interviews, from talking to Dr. Oz to Deborah Blum of Knight's Journalism. What makes a good interview? Or anyway, I just want to tell everybody, you've been at the Knight. You were a Knight, MIT Knight Fellow, right? You were there. So what makes a good interview or interviewer? How do you pick and how do you do it correctly? Because it isn't easy. I've discovered myself.
Yeah, well, I think you're really good at it because you're a extremely curious person. So that's the first thing. I mean, you know, I've had plenty of meetings or interviews with people who talked to me about the book who hadn't read the book or didn't even do kind of a cursory, like, go through the book, read about the book, know kind of what it's about. So I think, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, be curious, be educated about the topic that you're interviewing somebody about. Like when I go to interview somebody about a topic for an article, I prepare for that interview. Preparing for the interview, it's really not that difficult to do a good interview. I mean, I think you just have to be a naturally curious person who likes to talk to people and who's curious about the subject you're interviewing them about, right? And the bad interviews are the ones where someone just is kind of mailing it in. You're one in a line of interviews they're doing that day or something, and they're just kind of like have some cursory questions. But luckily for me, that
like that.
Oh my God! Oh yes, so many job interviews like that.
Yeah.
And you can imagine like actors and who go on all these press junkets for movies and stuff, and you see some of the questions they get asked. They're just like so ridiculous. So it's really not that hard. And I will say, like, I love being interviewed by other writers. Obviously, like things like this are really great. And Oz that was I wasn't even sure at first if I wanted to do that or not, but it was such a good opportunity to get the book out there before a big audience. So I did it.
Sure.
And he did it in the context of like a true crime show that he was putting together. And it worked out great. And, he hadn't read the book, but his staff had. And they had prepped him beautifully. And he, understood the medical part of it pretty well and also understood compounding pharmacies. And so he was prepared kind of in a different way as a doctor, as a medical doctor, or at least one who plays one on TV. And I was pretty surprised. They did a really nice segment on the book, because that show obviously has kind of a checkered past. So.
Yeah, that's true, but it's complicated because I mean, you're trying to get a message out that's quite important, and some of the people who need to hear it are in places that I mean, everyone, all the peculiars are going to be like, oh yeah, Jason Dearen, we're on your team. Yes, we need ethics, but some of the people who actually need these messages might not be in this room, so to speak.
For sure.
I have a couple questions popping up here. One is from Kathleen, and I have a feeling you're going to answer this question in a variety of different ways, right? How can people be fully reassured that this will not happen again somewhere else? And I have a feeling I know what you're going to say to that. Yeah,
no, they can't. And I mean, unfortunately, it is still happening. I mean, it is so the system is so broken that there's no data, so we can't even measure this. We can't track it. We don't even know the size of this industry. We don't know how many drugs they make. We don't know where they ship them. Yeah. There's no way to track it. So at this point, without some sort of federal legislation that really and funding for enforcement, the best thing that we can do is to educate ourselves and to ask the right questions. Which I put a list of questions at the end of the book that is kind of a flow chart for asking your doctor, like, oh, you're injecting this thing into me. What is this? Where did it come from? And then if they say this, you go to here. If they say this, go over here. And I had a pharmacist who was a scientific advisor on the book and who actually inspects compounding pharmacies for a state board. She devised these questions because she's seen how dangerous these places are and really wanted to help. And so she's also a lawyer. So she was perfect for it. And they're very detailed. So if you rip that out of the back of the book. Not if it's a library book, obviously, don't do that. But if it's your book, or photocopy it, take those to the doctor with you, and it's not that hard to do. And I just went and had a procedure and had a conversation with my doctor, and he was sending me to an independent pharmacy. It was in compounding pharmacies, so I had lots of questions. And he was only able to answer some of them, because guess what? Your doctor doesn't know. Your doctor's not the one who procures drugs. It's the pharmacist. It's the hospital pharmacist. It's the clinic pharmacist. They're the ones who have the relationships with the drug makers, with the middlemen, these drug supplying, the suppliers, with the compounding pharmacies. And so they'll have to go and ask them. So, sometimes the doctor will know, because they'll be an advocate for a certain drug, and they'll know more about it, but not all of them. And even in surgery, it's insane.
Because
it's insane.
I come from the historical perspective, right? And of course, in history, a lot of these things, the doctors were making their medicine. You didn't have it. So it's modern medicine is so it's moved into this realm, and it's almost like a massive factory or something, where one side doesn't necessarily know what the other side is doing, and that's astonishing, because it makes sense, and that's how we do it at such volume, and volume is partly what the problem that they were trying to solve, obviously, but you can understand how these things become disconnected from the original source and resource. Stephanie Smith says, do you still follow the aftermath of the outbreak and trial?
I do. I'm a member of a Facebook group that it's a private Facebook group for survivors and their family and the family members. And there's also a journalist named Walter Roach, who keeps a blog that I can actually post the link to right here.
Oh yeah, if you do that in the chat, so you should be able to see it, I think.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's just very kind of like, he writes about every single little like appeal that's happening, every legal filing. And then of course I know a lot of the lawyers too, who I continue to talk to. There's a documentary project in development, and so I'm still in contact with a lot of the sources and stuff for that.
Right. No, that's good. I mean, I find. Oh wait, did that go into private chat? I think it did. Hang on. Let me throw that over here into our public area here.
I got it. Oh,
you got it.
I'm gonna pop it up on the screen too.
Thanks,
there it goes.
There it goes. There it is. I've lost the question I was gonna put up here. There it is. Leanne asks, so do people's eyes, spines, and hearts all still receive drugs made without FDA supervision? I'm assuming so, yes, because there's still compounding pharmacies. And I know you have those questions at the back of the book, but for me, this is something that's really unusual, because I think most of us don't realize that that's even possible,
Yeah, I mean, it really all harkens back to what you were just talking about, how we got here because doctors were pharmacists. Doctors and pharmacists were basically the same thing, right? Doctor apothecaries, physician apothecaries. They made the medicines for millennia up through the early 20th century. Most medicines were made on site by either a doctor or a pharmacist at a corner pharmacy. There wasn't big pharma,
right?
And there were a lot of good things about that system, and there were a lot of bad things about that system. And one of the bad side of it was lack of standardization, varying quality. There were all sorts of amazing investigations by Congress in the early 20th century of drug quality at these pharmacies that I was able to get from the Library of Congress when I was researching this book, that showed, lots of deaths and poisonings and issues from shoddily made drugs by, rando pharmacists on the corner, right?
Right.
And so that's the short version is that gives rise to the FDA and this kind of standardization movement and creating big pharma so that drugs are made under this care. But there was a carve out in the law that created that system, that pharmacists could still legally make drugs with a prescription that were tailored for a specific patient. But it wasn't until like the 80s and 90s that a chemical company in Texas figured out that this could be a loophole to make drugs en masse under the guise of being a pharmacy, when they were really mass manufacturing drugs. And so they start calling themselves compounding pharmacies, but what they're really doing, and there's no FDA oversight of those because they're pharmacists. All they have to do is get prescriptions. So they come up with this really cool idea to make these long pre-printed prescription lists that a doctor will just have to sign his name once. And it's like thousands of prescriptions for a drug with all these fake names on it. And so that literally created this industry. And so, you know, and that's how we got here today with this whole thing and why these places exist. And as far as whether they still make it, yes, they are still, there are no laws that prevent a pharmacist from calling themselves a compounding pharmacy from making an injectable drug without FDA oversight and selling it to a hospital. They're supposed to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But no one's making sure that that supply chain is being cared for in the way that like a Pfizer or a Moderna or someone like that has to do to get the vaccine that goes into your arm. That's a whole different thing. These are literally like kind of mom and pop shops that are operating kind of in the shadows of the law that are creating these drugs that are in shortage. And many hospitals are still ordering from them. I got documents showing from the Office of Inspector General for Health and Human Services that after this outbreak, they did a study and were asking hospitals, how many drugs are you getting from compounding pharmacies that aren't registered with the FDA? And like something like 83% of them, it was like 17% said that they were still ordering from non-FDA approved suppliers. And that was voluntary. So it was way higher than that.
Sure. Like Anthro, she's the story of our entire world, bystander effect. Everybody's thinking someone else is taking care of it, is handling it. You know, I also just for a minute, like we gotta talk about fungus though, because
let's talk a lot about fungus. Fungus is amazing.
Terrifying stuff. I mean, it's amazing stuff. I study. I'm like a very amateur. My brother's much better at it than I am. I'm very amateur in mycology, but fascinated by it.
Me too.
You know, it's good stuff. It's crazy. But like I have, I'm fascinated. I forage. I'm fascinated by what mushrooms can do for our bodies and how they can help us but also like zombie ants, right? I mean, like weird stuff happens. Like you know about the zombie ants. You guys know about the zombie ants? Like their brains.
Remind me. I think it wasn't that in the Fantastic Fungi documentary. Wasn't there something?
Maybe I don't know. Davey, find me a picture of zombie ants. There's you can find it.
Please tell us about zombie ants. I want to know.
Okay, I know. So like they get the fungal spores.
You've said it. Now you must tell us.
Yes, they get fungal spores. So okay, guys, like there's zombie ants. All right, so I can take my hat off for this. All right, so like there's these spores, and the ants get them, and then it gets in their body, and it makes them kind of crazy, and it makes them like want to climb up high. So they're like, oh, I've got to go up. So then with the 6 legs, and then the fungus is like growing inside of their bodies. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're done growing. And and the ant stops moving and the fungus just bursts out of their body. And it's like these long tendrils come out everywhere. And that's how it spores. And so it forces them to go up so that the spores can get higher up in the zombie ants. Like
that's cool.
Crazy. Lexi says, Davey, find me a photo stat. Exactly. Zombie ants. There. We've got crazy zombie ants.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And they climb up and then cordyceps. There it is. Cordyceps are my passion. Thank you. That's the word. Cordyceps. Yeah. I want to see it bursting out of its head. It's very important because this is what I thought of when I was reading your book. Frankly, I'm thinking this and I'm like, oh my God, these people have slime mold in their brains, and is it going to do it? Oh, it's so gross, but it's awesome. It's like the Alien movie.
Yeah, fungi are incredible. I mean, in one of the fun parts of this book for me, in a book that we all say is so dark and kind of scary. But one of the fun parts of the research was working. There was a mycologist at Harvard who I worked with when I was doing the MIT fellowship, named Donald Pfister at the Harvard Herbarium, who served as kind of a guide through the world of mycology for me and helped me locate the original hand drawings of Xerohilum rostratum, which I used to illustrate.
Which we will all geek out about, just so you know. Like we will all geek out with you about this.
That's That's actually from the hand drawings I found at Harvard. That's in the lettering of the hardcover.
That's so cool.
A little bit higher.
Yeah.
A little bit. Hold it up a little bit higher.
A little bit higher. There we go. You guys see the thingies? Can you see the thingies?
There's actually here. There's a whole picture of the drawing here. I'll show you. But anyway, you know, just tracing that. There's one chapter that's just dedicated to the history of this fungus and kind of why it and how.
Yeah. It's just
that's Charles Jack Drexler. He was an incredible artist, actually, scientific artist. This isn't even close to how cool many of his drawings are, but this is pretty amazing.
But it's crazy stuff. And the Nat Geo film, do you find the part where its brain explodes with the thingy? Because that's really cool, you guys. If you miss it, it's
okay. I'll keep searching. I'll keep searching through it. I'll make sure.
All right. I know it's a long video, but it's a cool video. And
no, we need it.
Oh wait, hang on.
We must see it.
Did you find it? Is this it?
I found it. I think.
Here we go. Okay. It's messed up.
Can you make it a GIF too, please?
All right, here we go. It's sit. Show me the way. All right, he's climbing the tree.
Oh, stop.
Oh God, it's coming out. See, look, it's coming out of his head. Oh, it's like a unicorn horn that murders you.
I was actually thinking a lot about the movie Aliens recently, and listening to some podcasts about it, and yeah.
Okay, so there's a little spores. You see the little spores? So like it popped out of its head. And it's just eating its body, and so it just leaves these like nasty. And then
are they dead after that? Does it kill them?
Oh yeah, like all the dead, the dead that you can be. Yeah. So you had a lot. Oh yeah, that's right. Stephanie Smith is dealing with mold in her air ducts while she's reading your book, which I feel really bad about.
No, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's not all mold is bad, as we know, but this mold was interesting because it hadn't. One of the problems is when patients started coming into emergency rooms and they knew they had meningitis, and it took a while to figure out it was fungal meningitis because that's pretty rare. And then they were like trying to figure out what fungus it was. They couldn't find any literature on this fungus really in the human body. It had, during the AIDS epidemic, there were some infections from Xerohilum rostratum during that in AIDS patients, but there wasn't anything remotely similar to this that they could find. And this mold is really just kind of a corn grass pathogen. It had been studied as like as a cereal green eater, and so no one had any idea what it was going to do once it was injected directly into cerebrospinal fluid. And that's one of the interesting things about this story that was really fascinating to kind of dive into a little bit was, okay, well, what happened once this pathogen got into this new environment? What did it do? First of all, it wasn't like they only had this fungus in these dirty syringes that they were going into people's spines. There were other microbes it was contaminated with all sorts of other fungi and bacteria. And so this outcompeted all those other ones in that environment. It won that first battle. And then it was like, okay, what do I need? What do I want? What do I want? I want iron. I want iron. And where's iron? Where's the most iron rich environment? We're in cerebral spinal fluid, not a lot here. It's in the brain. And so it knew or went towards where the food was. And then went there and found a place to grow, and then blocked arteries and created these weird.
Which is a creepy thing about fungus, because fungus will literally.
I just have to add, but before I slip out, credit of course to natgeo.com for the video, and for our podcast listeners, obviously you didn't get a chance to see that. Go check out Nat Geo's website. If you type zombie ants in, you'll find it in 2 seconds. Nat Geo's YouTube channel. Yes,
Nat Geo, exploding ants, all the dead you can be.
I mean.
Which is pretty nuts. I see that.
Spectacularly dead.
Yes, spectacularly. Yes, I like that. Leanne had a point, which I think she had put up earlier and I missed it, but about COVID testing. So ideas about problems with testing accuracy for COVID versus quality assurance for COVID vaccine. Are these kinds of questions coming up in that direction as well? Because, that was happening very publicly, obviously, where this other thing was kind of not.
Oh, you mean were there issues with identifying the quality of the tests for finding and identifying this microbe in people's bodies back then during the outbreak.
We know that there's some testing accuracy issues for COVID.
Oh.
You know, like, and you know, is that you can clarify your question, Leanne, if you want to, but I just wonder, it certainly made me think about how under the radar this stuff was during this outbreak. But of course, now we're all kind of thinking about this stuff a lot, I think.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, there was a big difference in that this was COVID by the time we started developing tests in like February of 2020 or even late January of 2020 they knew it was a coronavirus. They knew it was a viral infection. They knew a lot about coronavirus. And when this happened, people were literally just showing up with a type of meningitis that they couldn't diagnose. Like they didn't even know what it was. And once they found out that it was a fungus, there wasn't like a test. They knew people had meningitis. They knew they had meningitis. They knew they had a fungus in their cerebrospinal fluid. So there wasn't like that they needed to create like a real-time test for people to go out and test themselves. It was just like a symptoms-based thing. So it was a little bit different. And obviously our failures to create good testing for COVID early on, CDC's failed efforts to do that in February was a huge reason why we're where we are now. Well, and messaging was scrambled, because it was happening so fast and it was happening publicly. I was trying to tell somebody, it's not like there aren't all these fits and starts in science all the time. It's just not normally headlines. Usually science has its poop in a group before it gets out there into the public. And that's the difference with epidemiology, though, isn't it? I mean, part of epidemiology is public communication, and it's probably one of the most difficult parts of that science is figuring out when and how to communicate about a fast-growing emergency with the public. And that's something I really pay attention to as a journalist, but also in this book, something I learned a lot about were the decisions that they made. And I'm critical of some of them in this book too, when they decided to name the company so that people would know, hey, if I've got this on my shelf, I need to take it off right away. Like they waited maybe too long, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, but it's an imperfect science, and it's really hard because they're also weighing so many different factors, not just well, and I mean, it's funny, like it's a communicable disease. It's not always a communicatable disease. Like there's a communication problem, even if it's communicable. Yeah. There's a whole correct.
Yeah, that's a
I see what you did there. I see.
Words are my thing. But truly, to me, fungus is complicated. It is a truly complicated situation. It's hard to fix. We do not have a lot of antifungals, and I noticed that when I was reading your stuff, because this is true of in my own life. I lived in an underground house. People know this about me. I lived in an underground house. There's going to be fungus. There's going to be mold. You're going to have weird skin things that happen that you're like, I'm 12. What's that? I don't know. And it's really difficult to treat. There's there's tenactin, right? Like there's not a lot of things over the counter that you can get. There's, if you have chronic fungal issues, there's not a lot of ways to treat them. And so even, just going into it, I already knew that it was going to be hard to treat. And that makes it really scary. And I think in that sense, it did remind me of COVID. This concept that you might catch something. It's been a while since we've had diseases that people thought, oh, I don't know if we can treat that. You know what I mean? Like we've had a kind of lull for a while where we thought, oh, you get the flu, you take flu medicine. You get the pneumonia, you do this. To get something where you're like, I don't know if there's anything to treat that is something that really scares people.
Yeah, and the mortality rate for the first, nearly month of this outbreak was more than 50%. I mean, if you got it, you had a really good chance of dying, and it was even higher than that in like the first week or two. So like it kept going down, and it wasn't until they identified the fungus in a lab, which wasn't until like 5 weeks. It took a while, and that they were able to target antifungals. And you talk about how difficult it is to find an antifungal from, when you were growing up in the underground house. Imagine if the fungus is in your central nervous system. I mean,
right.
There is the bad option and the worse option for, and you know what, both will save your lives maybe, because the both are also incredibly toxic.
Right.
Because you know, as you know, as a scientist too, I mean, a medicine that attacks a fungus is also going to attack human cells, and it's also, you know, so it's kind of one of those things. So everybody talked about, and I go into this, the treatments were just awful. We're talking about, you know, kidney failure in some cases, terrible,
essentially chemotherapy of a brand, right? You know, it's
exactly.
It's kill all the things and hope some of the human cells survive. Anna Lopez Carr was talking about the epidemic intelligence service, which you mentioned, and Anthrogirl was like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I know you'd mentioned one of the people when they got assigned to mycology was like all depressed and everything, but I don't know. I feel like mycology is like the secret service of the epidemic intelligence service. Like,
I agree.
You're really on the front lines there. So this is a fascinating, so much more that we could talk about, and we will. But we are at halftime, so we are ready for a little song and dance, folks. This is our time for our little short intermission, and I think we're doing Charming Disaster. Is that so, Davey?
No, I believe we have Cord.
Oh, that's right. We're doing. I'm sorry, it's Cord Ravenswood. That's right. It's a Peculiar in the Field, about something also small, though it's not fungus, and it is also kind of in your head. Can be everywhere. Let's have it.
Oh, hey there, Peculiars. It's me, Cord Ravenswood, your Peculiar in the Field. And on this episode, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the invisible architecture of the universe. It's something that I bet some of you already know a bit about. Neutrinos. Oh, and I'm going to be accompanying myself, because sometimes you just got to be your own best friend. There's neutrinos in my brain, and I don't care. There's neutrinos in my clothes and in my hair. Yeah, they pass right on through me like I wasn't even here. And I wonder, should I be scared? Because they're tiny and almost massless, and made nuclear reactions. They can turn chlorine into argon in the blink of an eye. But only if one's lucky enough to strike a chlorine's nuclei. But if not, they'll just fly right on by. Right on by. Right on by. Well, there's neutrinos in my brain, and I don't care. There's neutrinos in my clothes and in my hair. Normally, we wouldn't even know that they were there, but recently, we became aware. In 1987, they proved what we thought we knew. And now we have a clue where they come from and what they do. When they die, the whole universe pales in comparison. Quite literally, brighter than the sun. But you needn't worry, because they won't hurt anyone. At least we think. We're really not sure. We sure hope. There's neutrinos in my brain, and I don't care. There's neutrinos in my clothes and in my hair. Normally, we wouldn't even know that they were there. And I wonder, should I be scared? We sure hope. And I wonder, should I be scared? We sure hope. And I wonder, should I be scared? And I wonder, should I be scared? Oh, I wonder, should I be scared? And that's it for this episode. Peculiars, I want you to know that I've had a really good time during Season 2. And I will be back in Season 3. So until next time, I'm Cord Ravenswood, your Peculiar in the Field, going far and then, that's right, farther. Take care, everyone. We sure hope.
That's Cord Ravenswood, our Peculiar in the Field. I don't know if you ever watched Fraggle Rock, but you know the Uncle Fraggle who goes off to he's our Uncle Fraggle kind of in the field.
My wife Stephanie is the Fraggle Rock expert in our household. She can tell you everything about Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
I'm less versed.
That song actually had a Fraggle Rock beat to it, like down at Fraggle Rock. It kind of it's very bouncy.
You didn't see our Goatman. The Goatman song was really something. That might have been my favorite Cord Ravenswood song this year.
I need to see that.
That was a good one. Yeah,
I'm a fan.
Yeah, that was for the Unidentified with Colin Dickey, and we had Annalie Newitz, who was also on our show, also a MIT night person. So
that's right.
Anyway,
yeah.
Well, phew! Now that we know, we got through all the neutrinos and stuff. We have a very important thing we do here.
Okay.
On this show, and it's kind of a challenge. It's a challenge for you, the author, but don't be scared of neutrinos or this quiz. It is a quiz, but it's not like in school, because here you can phone a friend. You can actually phone the Peculiars. The Peculiars will help you out. And Davey's job is to try and stump you as best he can. He's actually pretty good, though. I have to say, on our last show, he asked questions about Philadelphia of two Philadelphians, and we lost complete control of the show after that. So
they were jumping on the questions before I could even finish them. We didn't even get to the multiple choice section.
I know. It was great. So, well, we're going to do the quiz.
Okay.
Peculiars, be ready with answers, and also don't forget to queue up any further questions you might have that you want to ask about the book following that. And in the meantime, I'm going to take myself out of the way. Davey, take it away.
So I took, sometimes I go different places with these and different themes in the book or something like that. And for this one, I decided the word shot is so versatile. There's so many different types of shots. I figured let's ask you a quiz that I'm calling this week, The Shot Heard Around the World. So the shot heard around. Now, these are not all sports questions. I'll tell you, this is going to be very varied quiz here. So the shot heard around the world, besides being the start of the Revolutionary War, was also the nickname of the home run hit by this Giants player to win the 1951 NL pennant. Maybe one of the most iconic home run calls of all time and one of the most iconic baseball moments of all time. The shot heard around the world was a hit by A. Willie Mays, B. Don Mueller, or C. Bobby Thompson.
Well, did you know that I am a rabid San Francisco Giants fan?
Well, then this one might be just as easy as the Philadelphia girls last week. Peculiars, let's challenge the Peculiars for a second. Did they know? I'm sure they love it when I go sport. All these scientists that we have in here, they love it when I go sports, probably.
Yeah, it's C for. I would say C.
He's going C, Bobby Thompson, and the answer is yes. Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world.
I am useless at these. I'm like.
I also thought about calling this "Don't Throw Away Your Shot," a little Hamilton reference in there.
That's a good one.
All right, question 2. We're going completely different here. If you want a stiff shot in a bar, consider ordering a 3 Wise Men shot. Which of the following alcohols is not included in a 3 Wise Men? A. Jack Daniels, B. Jose Cuervo, or C. Johnny Walker?
Kathleen, can you help us out here?
Yeah,
I think the Peculiars might. I think the Peculiars might.
Okay, we've got 2 C's.
I'm gonna
go with the Peculiars on this one because I had no. Kaisa, don't or Kaisa. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. I'm gonna say C because I just feel like the first 2 are even more brand names. Oh, but a lot of B's. There's more B's.
Are you going to go with your gut or are you going to go with the Peculiars?
Let's see. I think the first one, who is our, is Kathleen our bartender? Yes, C. I'm going with C.
All right, he's going with C. And the answer is Jose Cuervo is
it was B.
It was B.
Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine.
Jack Daniels, Johnny Walker, and Jim Beam would be the 3 Wise Men.
3 whiskeys. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you want to go with a 4 horsemen, you could add in Jose. Some people add Jose. Some people add Jameson as the 4 horsemen. If you really want to get nuts. All right.
It was the one that isn't whiskey.
I now feel like I have to break into song, right? Like, don't we all have to sing like Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like. No one else.
Well, I don't know. Is that a song or are you making it up?
No, it's just a song with a little salt and lime. Something about kissing cowboys and shooting out the light. No.
No, she ducked out pretty quick on that one. All right, finally, shots could be cinematic. You can have an iconic cinematic shot. And I took me a while to figure out which one I was going to pick here, but I decided to go with one of the masters himself, Alfred Hitchcock, has captured many iconic shots. But in this famous one from North by Northwest, we see Cary Grant running away from what? Running in the foreground away from what in the background? Is it A, a tank, B, a helicopter, or C, a crop duster airplane?
I'm pretty sure it's C, a crop duster airplane.
All right. The answer would be yes, it is C, crop duster. Good. We've got some Alfred Hitchcock fans in the audience. As Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Good job. Good job on the quiz this week.
Thank you.
I found out that Teresa knows the song I was singing and Lorelai was singing along. So it is a song. There is a song.
I went through so many iconic shots that I was looking back at I found a list of 100 iconic shots, all the way back to Buster Keaton and Casablanca and Citizen Kane.
Did you know?
That's
great. And North by Northwest.
No, but look, fun fact: the crop duster was dropping an antifungal.
There you go.
Probably.
By fun, he means completely made up.
Yes.
I do have a question for Jason that I've kind of been sitting on. If this is going to get you in any legal trouble, you don't have to answer. But with the compounding lobby being so strong and powerful, did you have any problem writing the book, publishing the book after the release of the book?
They, they actually made a lobbyist available to me to talk. They were proud of the work that they did. They are true believers that in that they're doing the right thing. So I don't think that after the book came out, I was a little bit worried about that. I wasn't worried about getting anything wrong. I worked really hard on this book, and I had an excellent fact checker who put me through my paces, and legal review at Penguin Random House. And so I wasn't worried about getting sued or anything like that. Since I've done some talks to pharmacy groups. There have been pharmacy safety groups who have come and had me as a speaker. They've actually taken the book as kind of a rallying cry, which has been great to see. And some of those folks have showed up, but they mostly just complain that I'm being mean and stuff like that, rather than kind of ominous. I don't like.
Not trying to silence you or anything.
Right. I just finished Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe about the Sackler dynasty. And, at the end of the book, he writes about how there was a shadowy dude outside, in a car outside his house, watching his family, and how scary and kind of creepy that was. Yeah. If they did any of that kind of stuff with me, I didn't notice.
I love the comments from our peculiars. R. Gibson says, I love the questions that start with that. Not to get you in any legal trouble.
Yeah.
Kaiser says, I'd love to see Hitchcock's tank cut. A deleted scene.
I love Hitchcock.
Yeah, it is interesting because you never know. Some people asked me if I would have gotten in trouble with animal rights for the book that I wrote with Dr. Humble, but actually I used their work a lot, and I ended up becoming friends with, or at least friendly with, Ingrid Newkirk, who founded PETA, and in fact, they asked for a copy to be in their library, so I was never in any danger from them. However, I haven't even finished the book I'm writing right now, which is a history of the trans clinic in Berlin in 1918 that was destroyed by the Nazis, and I've already had death threats for this one, so that ought to be interesting when it comes out. Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, maybe I should not be. Hey, peculiars, you guys can all be like my little bodyguard army, right? When the trolls come out to get me. Leanne had a question, and I had wondered this too, actually, which was, if states oversee compounding, how can states ship to another state? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Wild West nature of this whole thing. It's an excellent question, and it's an unanswered question. It doesn't work. That's exactly. So what's supposed to happen is that, the state of Alabama is supposed to oversee the safe compounding of drugs in their state. And then when that is shipped to California, the state of California relies on to a certain degree, the integrity of the system in Alabama to make sure that the drugs are safe. Now, we know from every other type of state, any sort of state oversight, it's a patchwork system and it's only as good as the weakest link. And so you have a lot of states that have a couple of pharmacy inspectors for thousands of pharmacies. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of work being done that with no eyes on it. But they can still legally ship to other states. Some are better than others in terms of tracking that. There is some tracking going on out there, but it's all really not, it's difficult to understand. Whereas FDA tracks FDA approved drugs and you kind of know where they're all going and there's all sorts of standards and stuff. Here, it's like they can voluntarily say where they're shipping them, where they're not, or whether and how much they're shipping. So you get kind of like a little piece of data out of that to see how much is being done. The law that was passed in the wake of this tragedy in 2012, in 2013, a law was passed called the DQSA, Drug Quality and Security Act. That was supposed to create a framework under which compounders can only ship up to 5% of their drugs, so that it was a small amount that could, ostensibly be, checked. That has still never put into effect. The industry lobby has fought that completely. Jeez. And then the pandemic actually served as an excuse for FDA to kind of just throw that out. That has never gone into effect. So it's still that way. There are just very few checks and balances out there for this stuff. There just are. And I wish I had better news on that. I don't.
It's so crazy. Well, and let's see, I just lost it. Kathleen was asking, did you find that the interviews people were people blaming each other, or were they playing innocent? What was sort of the results?
Yeah, some of the folks, so obviously the two main pharmacists are in prison and wouldn't talk to me. Their lawyers wouldn't talk to me. I know what their kind of like official arguments were based on their, arguments of court or whatever. But I was able to talk to the man who actually mixed the drugs. He took the mixed drug and put it into all the vials that ended up getting sent out, which were contaminated. And he reached a deal with a government to testify against everybody and didn't get any prison time. And he sat down with me for a series of interviews. He doesn't blame anybody but himself, and for not speaking up more quickly. Of course, on the victim side, people who were hurt or whose family members were killed in this, they have a lot of blame to pass around. There's a lot of anger there. So on that side of things, is dealing with a lot of that kind of discussion. But in terms of people saying oh, it wasn't our fault. It was no. I mean, at this point, the facts are pretty clear. Everybody knows kind of who was to blame. And while they've maintained their innocence, there's really no good argument to back that up.
Got it. Okay. Well, it's interesting because it does make you wonder how people are planning to kind of present themselves at the end of a situation. It's always now there's been enough time where they can positioning themselves and whatnot. I mean, news moves fast. It moves very fast, right?
Yes.
And I feel like I was writing a paper about mass shootings, and then I was writing a paper about the abortion, and then I was writing a paper about mass shootings, and then and COVID, and then monkeypox, and I feel like that happens all the time. Journalistic writing goes so quickly. How do you? So one of my questions I'd like to kind of leave us with maybe is, as a journalistic writer, how do you write a book about a journalistic event? It's very, very difficult because it happens in a moment.
I know what you're saying. I've kind of in my career over the last 10 years or so, I've taken a different tack in my thinking about how I approach my work. And I think of things more thematically, historically now than I do in terms of news. I kind of compartmentalize that type of writing. I do still write articles for the Associated Press that are more based on kind of things that are happening now. that are, shorter term investigations, 3 or 6 month investigations rather than like multi-year investigations. But, I published a series of stories last year that took me 5 years really to finish off and on working on. And I find that it doesn't matter if the characters and the event that I pin kind of the themes I'm interested in on are older, or even if people know a little bit about them already. Yeah. If the themes are timeless or important or interesting, then I can use that kind of those examples, those characters, that narrative through line to talk about these bigger things, whether it be, like I did a series last year that kind of delved into white supremacy in law enforcement, something totally different than this, through the eyes of an informant in the Ku Klux Klan who exposed a murder plot in 2017 in Florida, and I wrote like a long narrative about that, and it took me years to kind of piece all that together. And but the theme of racism and the theme of infiltration of racists into law enforcement is one that's timely now, and it's been timely for decades, And so with this,
I wish some of these things weren't so timeless.
Yeah, and with this book, it's the same thing. It's like there are themes in this book of systemic failure, of kind of heroic actions by scientists and epidemiologists, and that I just are like kind of timeless and interesting, and they don't need to be newsy. They're just interesting on their own.
It's funny because I'm a historian who stumbled into anthropology like sort of sideways accidentally because of my historical bent, because often history does tell you a story about what's happening today. And so I feel like even though this happened officially in 2012, it's been, and I said so in my intro video, in my eyes, I feel like your book has more salient power now because of COVID almost than it did before. Anthogirl said she agreed with Keza that it'd be nice if some of this stuff would actually go out of style, but it doesn't. It doesn't seem to.
Agreed.
Stephanie says this has been a really eye-opening experience of a story, especially with how recently it occurred, and I agree. This has been phenomenal to have you here. It's been great to be part of it. The Peculiars are awesome and always really excited. I have a couple announcements, and also just letting people know that we have two. I put it in the comments here. We do a hat draw now for names for winners. And so if you are with us today, Susan Cotter and Eileen Cohen, you were our hat draw names and you get some swag. So you just have to send me an email at peculiar@vschillace.com, same email that you get your messages from me for tickets and links. And otherwise you can contact me on the website or anywhere else. My gosh, you guys, I'm so easy to find. It's another reason why death threats are kind of a problem.
Death threats. Yeah, I'm laughing. I don't know why.
Hey, no problem. I've had them before. I don't think anyone really wants to kill me. I think online spaces are weird, right? People are like, I hope you die. They don't necessarily want to kill you. They just hope you die. And I will. Eventually, we all do. So
we all do.
But other announcements I have to make is I have now, and if you haven't seen the design already, it is up there. It is out there. We have a design for our new season 3 t-shirts and also some new swag t-shirts that we're going to be making up too. They're up on our Facebook. I put them on Twitter. I sent them out in the newsletter. If you're not getting our newsletter, let me know, because I do try to keep that up to date. We have about 609 people receiving our newsletter these days, which is exciting. And 92 of you are on the VIP list. So yay, you. And also I see Susan is here. Good. Susan Cotter, hurrah. Send me an email and you are one of our people. I'm so excited. And let's see, anything else that I've missed? Davey, are there anything that I have forgotten to say? Oh yeah, Chicago. So obviously Leanne and folks, Susan and some other people were in to see Lindsay Fitzharris in DC. Hooray. That was amazing. And I will be in Chicago with Lindsay on Sunday afternoon. So if you are going to be in Chicago to see us, yes, there they were in DC. There is a banner, and I'm bringing it with me to Chicago, so you can hold the Peculiar Book Club banner to welcome Lindsay in Chicago. I will actually be doing a Q&A with her and doing a book signing as well while I'm there at the museum. So I hope you can join us. Jason, you are on the mailing list, are you not? I think you are.
I sure am.
You are.
And I love it.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. 609. Yes, we have 609 people on the newsletter list.
It's awesome.
Pretty crazy. Good. Rebecca's going to be there. Abigail's going to be there. Fantastic. Good. So I think you guys have my information, so we'll connect when we get up there. I think that's everything. Davey, I really need to start writing these things down. Anything I've forgotten? Anything you have to announce?
I'm just looking for the designs on the Facebook page.
There they are.
I'm just showing off some of the fun art on the Facebook page.
Right.
And
that peculiar book.
This one.
Where's the other one? That one, yes. That's Julius Squid. He was our original mascot, and the next one is Eustace Puss. And Sarah actually pointed out it's sort of like how it started and how it's going. So we've gotten angry as time goes on. Susan Ballinger is listening on an airplane home, by the way, apparently.
Wow.
Susan Ballinger is listening from the air.
That's so cool.
We've reached new heights.
Go, Susan! All right.
Awesome.
So the Peculiar Book Club. Going places.
That is so cool.
Well, thank you all for joining me. Thank you for joining us, Jason, and for putting up with my silly hat.
You guys are the best. Thank you very much for having me and being so awesome. And if you're ever in Brooklyn, come hang out with myself, and Rachel Gross is right down the street. I know you're having her on later this season.
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
this way. Yeah. So
and actually, Charming Disaster, our often featured band, is doing a brunch in Brooklyn on Sunday. If you're so inclined, a brunch show somewhere. It's up on our page someplace. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Once again, if you're weird, your family.
You got the blue bottle blues when you wake up in the night. Don't make a big mistake, 'cause you can never make it right. When you reach out for the vial, feel the ridges in the glass. It's a matter of survival, baby, better watch your back. There is no